which is known as the tablecloth. He's his book was binding upon all the Jewish communities in the diaspora and also in Palestine. And he said that head covering was halachically required, which means the law says that you must cover your head if you're a man or a boy, because it's a question of piety. Now, I'm giving you the history of head coverings, and even though they were not always required, by today, by the time every Jew does something, like covers their head today, suddenly, if something is done for many, many years, then it becomes a law. You know, according to Jewish law, suddenly it becomes a din. You can't say, well, I don't believe in this and I don't believe in that. You know? Even though it starts out as a voluntary decree where some people do it or not, by the time of the Shulchan Aruch, everybody was required already to cover their head. Now, what happened in Poland, Rabbi Moses Isserles, he accused the wealthy and aristocratic Polish Jews of hypocrisy by adopting a lenient attitude towards certain dietary laws, and they were not scrupulous in their head covering at that time. By the year 1500, it became a cardinal violation of Jewish law to go bareheaded, in Poland, that is. And in Poland, of course, you all know, we see the Hasidim today, they dress like the poorets, like the noblemen. The noblemen wore black hat, the noblemen wore strammels like fur hats and long black coats, so they imitated them. So at that point, they didn't wear turbans in Poland, they wore black hats. And then the king and all the noblemen, they had a habit in Poland that they would walk into a synagogue just to disturb, to look around. So whenever a Jew or anyone else saw a nobleman, he had to tip his hat. So it was decided, since they tip their hat, when they lift their hat, then they will be bareheaded. So therefore, they have to wear another head covering under their hat. I'm sure you've seen many people today, Hasidim, who wear a black hat, and underneath is sticking out a black yarmulka. They have a double. They put the yarmulke there because they're afraid in case they ever have to tip their hat, their head should not be uncovered. That's how serious it is today. Nobody can have their head uncovered. In the 17th century, in Poland, it was absolutely essential to cover your hair. Now, in the year 1100 in Germany, the Ashkenazi rabbinate retained their conservative position throughout the 18th century, and they said that we must cover their hair. Their head. However, what happened in Germany is that they had schools like Samson Raphael Hirsch, who was the first one to establish a yeshiva where you learned secular subjects and you also learned subjects, religion. That was like in 1850. So in Germany they said, why you learn the Orthodox, you learn the Torah, you have to cover your head, that's a must. But in the afternoon, when you take subjects of a secular nature, then you can be bareheaded, even in the yeshiva. So they have their own rule. You could be bareheaded on certain times, and otherwise you must cover your hair. What about the Vilna Gaon? He said, there is no prohibition whatsoever against remaining bareheaded. But he means just when you have to be bareheaded in certain situations, not during prayer. At that time they already covered their hair. But public bareheaded was allowed. They were not against it. Now what happened in 1700? In Italy, Italian Jews were very liberal. In 1720, some people covered their head and some people didn't. According to Solomon Levy, a rabbi and a physician in the late 18th century in Verona, even men of piety and Talmudic scholars considered the wig to be sufficient for head covering. However, Rabbi Solomon, he's condemned this practice for wigs because wigs were worn both by Gentiles and also worn more by Jews. So therefore, just wearing a wig doesn't indicate that you're Jewish. So, because your head is covered, you've seen in the movies, 18th century, 17th century men wore wigs. But some rabbis said that was enough of a head covering, and some rabbis in Italy said it was not enough of a head covering. So therefore, there was again an issue whether you must. And now in Venice, the big rabbi wrote that today many Jews still wear no head coverings, and there's no difference between a Christian and a Jew, because many of them don't believe in head